I never expected to find love on my lonely ranch when I bought a pregnant woman's freedom. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. It was a stormy night. Rain pounded the roof like 1,000 angry fists. Lightning tore across the sky, illuminating the dark corners of my solitary existence. I stood there, trembling, mind racing, as I took the plunge into the unknown. She appeared in my life like a ghost, right out of nowhere. Desperate eyes filled with fear, a belly swollen with life, her silhouette flickered in the flickering light. Her name was Clara. I felt my heart skip. There was something magnetic about her, something that whispered secrets of worlds uncharted. I could see the storm spinning in her gaze, just as wild as the tempest outside. The townsfolk had warned me. "Stay away from that one," they said, hushed voices fluttering like moths in the dark. "She's trouble," they muttered. But what did they know? I craved connection. I wanted to unlock the mystery she held inside. So, I made the choice. I bought her freedom. My gut twisted as I realized how much I was risking. What was I getting myself into? Clara's presence filled the empty spaces of my ranch, yet it brought chaos, too. There were screams from the past, the kind that clung like dust in the sunlight. I could almost hear them, the whispers of joy, tears of anguish. She carried the weight of 1,000 silent stories, and I was desperate to know them all. Some days, Clara would curl up on the wooden floor, tears spilling down her cheeks. I wanted to rush to her, to pull her close, to tell her she wasn't alone anymore. Other days, she pushed me away, a wild thing, unyielding. The flicker of hope felt like a fragile candle in the storm, but I clung to it, even as my breath caught. As the days grew longer, the lines blurred between caretaker and something much deeper. I found myself studying the way the light played on her skin, the way her laughter spilled out like the most beautiful melody. But shadows always danced around us. Secrets wrapped around Clara like cold chains, and sometimes, I feared those chains would pull me under too. Then came the day when the truth stabbed through the chaos. Clara stood with trembling hands, eyes wide with anguish, and whispered the words that shattered our fragile makeshift world. "The baby, it's not what you think." My heart plummeted. I could hardly breathe. What did that mean? What had I just stepped into? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The days following Clara's revelation felt heavy, as if a tangible weight had settled over the ranch, a shroud of uncertainty that seeped into every corner of my existence. I could hardly look at her without the thoughts spiraling through my mind like a whirlwind, tearing apart my hopes and rebuilding doubts in their place. Every glance felt charged with unspoken questions, and every silence was thick with the consequences of our fragile understanding. Her hands rested on her belly, protective, as if the child inside was both a blessing and a curse. I watched her move through the house with a kind of grace and despair that made my heart ache. The mornings were the hardest. The golden light pouring through the kitchen window illuminated the shadows beneath her eyes and the quiet tremor of her fingers. I braved the distance between us, but the air felt electric, crackling with tension. One evening, the weight of unsaid words hung between us like a pendulum, swaying with the rhythm of our unsteady breaths. "Clara," I whispered, my voice hoarse, "I need to understand." I wanted to cradle her, to piece together the fragments of her unyielding sadness, but as I stepped closer, her skin prickled and recoiled. The storm clouds were gathering once more, not from the sky, but within her. "I can't," she murmured, her voice barely a whisper, the confession clawing at her throat. "It's not just that the baby isn't yours, it's everything surrounding my life before this." "What do you mean?" My chest tightened. My mind raced. It was a dangerous place for thoughts to roam free, but I curbed my racing heart. I had to keep calmly fishing for understanding, no matter how deep the waters ran, but she only turned away, staring out past the farther hills where the shadows grew long and menacing. I wanted to shake her, to force her to see that this was a safe place now, that she didn't have to bear the burden alone, but the one thing I didn't want was to push her further into isolation. The following days, yet again, uncovered the flicker of kindness from unexpected corners. As the townsfolk whispered behind our backs, some came cautiously to our sanctuary with warm meals or lingering glances that carried a story. An elderly woman, Miss Agnes, who I suspected had watched my every move since I moved in, arrived with a pie as if to say that there were still remnants of humanity beneath the surface of the town's chilly judgments. Clara softened under the warmth of her presence, peeling back layers of ice built over years of distrust. "Thank you," Clara said one afternoon, the words spilling out against her will when Miss Agnes brought her a fragrant pot of chicken soup. The warmth radiating from the gift was swallowed in seconds by the chill dwelling in Clara's heart. They spent hours knitting and sharing stories that felt all too foreign to me, connecting more than I could in a multitude of words, but every time I saw Clara's expression illuminate, it was like a knife carving deeper into my gut. There was a part of her that I still couldn't reach, shadows ever present, haunting me with uncertainty. Secrets thrummed and danced just out of my grasp, and I found myself more lost than ever. Then one evening, as I returned from the barn after a long day's work, I felt a shift in the air. Clara was unusually quiet. I found her sitting on the porch, gazing at the horizon, so far away from me and yet so close, as if she stood at the very edge of some uncharted frontier. I took a seat beside her, my heart thudding as apprehension dripped from every syllable that lodged in my throat. "Clara, I need to tell you something," she interrupted, and my stomach knotted. "It's about my past. About who I ran from." Her eyes shimmered with a blend of anguish and determination. "If I don't share it all, I'll never be free." Just then, a sharp crack of thunder ripped through the sky. The heavens roared to life around us, diving into chaos as rain drums pulsed against the wooden beams of our porch, the world outside fading into the frenetic patter. The tension hung thick as I realized this wasn't merely a storm, but a gale threatening to unveil the very fabric of our fledgling bond. I could feel our futures, twisted and entwined, swelling like the dark clouds above us. "Clara, please," I reached for her hand, but she pulled back, eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I didn't just escape, I was taken. I ran from someone powerful, someone who will come looking for me," she confessed, each word a shattering truth. It broke through the storm's howling and left everything else silent. "And the baby," she hesitated, breathless, "is part of what they want." The world stilled as dread gripped me. The storm echoed Clara's inner turmoil, roaring against the revelations we could no longer ignore. I stared into her turbulent gaze, knowing that our road had just twisted toward an unforeseen precipice. "I need you to decide, do you still want me here?" she asked, voice trembling, catching in her throat like the storm against the roof. Before I could respond, the wind howled under the night sky, carrying with it the promise of uncertainty, a chilling reminder that the storm outside mirrored the tempest within. And as I grappled with my emotions, every resolve was shaken to its core, a dreadful cliffhanger looming heavy in the air. The rain continued to pelt the house like 1,000 tiny hammers, vibrating with the force of Clara's revelation. I glanced over at her, her silhouette harsh against the flickering porch light. The words hung in the air, heavy and unresolved. The storm roared around us, a cacophony that drowned out the interventions of reason and caution. I blinked, as if trying to dispel a waking nightmare, but the truth loomed in the grim light, a truth I had never fathomed would breach the sanctuary we had begun to build. "Someone powerful?" I echoed, barely able to harness the disbelief that poured from my lips. My thoughts splintered into a race against time, envisioning the consequences of past and future colliding in ways I couldn't yet comprehend. "Clara, do you mean what is it that they want?" Her eyes fell away from mine, slipping into a spiral of memory that threatened to drown her in anguish. "I can't go back," she murmured, almost to herself, "not to that life. Not to him." The terror in her voice was palpable, both a proclamation of pain and a plea for understanding. "Who is he?" I pressed gently. "You don't have to face this alone. We can figure it out together. There was a small hope flaring within me that, perhaps, revealing this shadowed past would weave us closer, transfusing her heart with courage to confront whatever monster lurked in her rearview mirror. When she finally met my gaze again, a glimmer of that long-buried trust flickered in her eyes, a spark, a tentative connection igniting amid the storm. "He was as my husband," Clara admitted, voice quaking. "When I found out I was pregnant, I knew I had to run. He wasn't just powerful, he was dangerous." My insides twisted at that word husband. The syllables carved deep, and a new wave of resentment frothed at its edges. But I swallowed it down. This wasn't about me, this was about her truth, her struggle. "Clara, I never wanted to be trapped. I thought I could escape his control," she whispered, tears slipping down her cheeks, illuminated by the flashes of lightning. "But he is relentless. If he finds me," a visceral punch filled the hollow space between us. I couldn't shake the image of a dark figure pursuing her, an ominous shadow trailing her every step from behind the veil. "You won't have to face him alone," I vowed, my voice firm and raw. "We will stand against this together, I promise." For a moment, Clara's lips curved upward, that spark momentarily blossoming into a flicker of hope. But fear soon settled back into her features, a deepened shadow as she looked away again, biting her lower lip. "I don't want you to get hurt," she confessed, her words splintered by another crash of thunder. "I can't let that happen. You deserve a life free from this chaos." Clenching my fists tightly, I fought against the swell of frustration that rose like bile in my throat. "What about you?" I countered, anguish edging into my tone. "What about the life you deserve?" As she turned her gaze back to the horizon, a flash of light painted her face, a portrait of resilience and sorrow. "There's something else you need to know," she said finally, her voice a whisper above the tumult. The baby isn't just a part of me. It's part of this fight." I furrowed my brow, my heart racing against the flood of possibilities. "What do you mean?" "It's believed that my baby holds something, a kind of power." She gulped, her voice cracking. "This is bigger than either of us. I'm not safe with him. You might not be safe with me, either." The finality of her words sank into my bones like poison. I couldn't breathe, the weight of fear and uncertainty pushing down on me. Would the pursuit for freedom bleed out the very thread that bound us together? What if I faltered, collecting my thoughts, "We find a way to protect the baby from him. We don't have to tell anyone." Clara shook her head, her eyes wide with panic. "You don't understand. I have to confess everything, no matter the cost. If I don't face him, they will never stop coming for me, and for the child." My heart ached, torn between the instinct to protect and the reality that we were standing at an insurmountable precipice. "Clara, please, don't do this alone." But as the last shroud of sunlight dipped below the hills, shrouded by the advancing storm clouds, a chilling quiet consumed the world. The wind picked up in intensity, and the air charged with an unknown electricity. Before I could utter a single word more, a figure emerged from the shadows beyond the fields, dark and foreboding, as if the storm had birthed it from the very ground she had tried to escape. The silhouette was unmistakable, tall, menacing, and edging closer like a merciless storm that knew only how to destroy. Clara gasped, her eyes widening in horror as recognition twisted her pale face. "Clara!" I shouted over the howl of the winds, adrenaline thrumming beneath my skin. "We have to bolt, now." In a flash, the weight of our delicate promise shattered as we were thrust into the jaws of the storm once more, but this time it was no longer just the weather. We were braced against an unimaginable threat. A fresh wave of doubt crashed against us, drowning out the vulnerability we had finally begun to face together. The only question that persisted in my mind as the figure advanced was whether we could truly handle the tempest that awaited. The figure drew closer, muscles coiling beneath its dark coat like a predator ready to strike. My heart raced with the urgency of 1,000 pounding drums. The cold stench of fear gripped me, and I felt every inch of the ground beneath us tremble, as if nature itself were privy to the danger that approached. "Run, Clara!" I shouted again, shoving her ahead of me toward the dim light of the porch. The rain lashed at my face, but there was no time to falter. The instinct to protect her surged within me like a wildfire, and I moved with purpose, urgency fueling each stride. She stumbled slightly, the urgency of my command battling against the shock that had tethered her to the damp earth. For a fleeting moment, I glimpsed her struggling, a blend of fear and defiance, temptation luring her back to her past, a past that had nearly consumed her. Clara. I held out my hand, desperate to bridge the distance between us. She remembered that spark, the tentative bond that had begun to form in the tempest's eye. It flickered but did not fully dim. With a sudden surge of resolve, her gaze broke away from the shadowy figure just beyond the threshold of our sanctuary, and she sprinted toward me. The thunder cracked overhead, a symbol heralding the chaos brewing just beyond the porch. Our fingers interlaced, and for a moment, it felt as if hope had anchored us in place, but even as I grasped her hand, the darkness lurched forward, and I could see the figure's features sharpening in the flashes of lightning, a face that was both familiar and terrifying. Clara. The voice cut through the storm, full of accusation and abandonment. You can't hide from me forever. The realization hit me like a battering ram. This wasn't just any ghost from her past. It was him. The husband she had fled. A man whose very presence threatened to obliterate everything we had fought to protect. I scanned the surroundings for options, the desperation making each heartbeat feel like a countdown that we need to get inside now. I urged, pushing Clara ahead of me as I glanced back at the figure. His steely gaze felt like ice in my veins, an unrelenting omen of the battle ahead. That we dashed into the house, slamming the door behind us, the heavy thud echoing like the final note of a long-forgotten symphony. The storm raged outside, yet the chaos inside felt just as potent, a slugfest between survival and surrender. Where's the phone? Clara shouted, wrestling with fear in her voice. We need to call for help. He can't find me here. Clara, wait. I grabbed her arm, my heart sinking as I tore my gaze away from the door. You can't involve anyone else. Anyone could be one of his spies, but he won't stop. Her dark eyes were fierce now, reflecting the tempest around us, a fire ignited not just by panic but by a flicker of defiance. Hell come for me, for us. You have to know this. My breaths came fast, jagged pieces of air catching in my throat. I had stepped into a labyrinth of her making, and the walls were closing in with each wave of her pain. What if we left? We could drive out together and start over. No one would know where to look for you, for the baby. The tremor in her chin told me that my words were little more than frayed strings, nearly snapping in the face of the reality we were caught in. And what if we don't? She asked softly, the vulnerability bleeding through her steel. What if leaving just means running away without answers? I cannot abandon what's part of me, part of this fight. That my chest ached with the weight of her words, the truth of them wrapping around my heart like vines of fear. Then we face him, I said finally, steadiness lining my voice. Together, we confront this threat. We can't shy away any longer. Before Clara could respond, thunder rumbled in a crescendo above us, shaking the very structure of the home we had begun to carve out, a fortress built on fragile foundations. And that was when I heard a quiet creaking of wood. The unmistakable sound of someone trying to enter, claws tapping softly against the barrier we had erected. Look, I said, urgency flowing through my veins, let's climb upstairs. We can find a place he's less likely to check. Clara nodded, desperation sharpening her resolve, and together we ascended the staircase, echoes of the rain enveloping us like a shroud. The cabin held secrets within its walls, and part of me wondered if we could find refuge in that familiarity. Just as we reached the top landing, I turned back for a fleeting look at the staircase before entering a small room at the end of the hall. The flickering comes from the fading light of the last candle we had ignited earlier, and Clara's eyes glimmered as she stepped around me, finding solace in its glow, but that peace was short-lived. A crash erupted below, followed by a voice that sent icy shivers racing along my spine. Clara, it's time to come home, he called, tainted by command. Together, we pressed our backs against the wall, the sounds of the storm replaced by an equally violent confrontation with fear. I could feel Clara's heartbeat sinking to the chaos outside, and as reality closed in around us like the storm tightening its grip, I silently promised myself we would not be taken captive by the shadows. But there stood one undeniable truth in that fleeting moment: we were cornered, and doubt clawed at my insides, leaving me to wonder if the power of love and the will to fight would be enough to stand against the tempest that loomed, demanding its due. The roar of the storm outside paled in comparison to the one brewing in our hearts. "Do you trust me?" I murmured into the silence, the words both fragile and unwavering. Clara's existence hinged on the cusp of so many unknowns, but her answer, whether spoken or not, would alter everything. And I was prepared to fight for our tomorrow, even as the clock ticked mercilessly toward an uncertain reckoning. The muffled sounds of storm and chaos below swallowed our breaths as we stood in that dimly lit room. The candle's flame flickered erratically, casting dancing shadows on the walls, mirroring the flickers of fear and resolve clashing in my heart. I felt Clara's body tense beside me, a subtle reminder of the tumult that tethered us to this moment. She turned to me, her eyes searching mine, as if trying to find the answer to a question neither of us dared to speak aloud. In that quiet, charged pause, I saw the weight of her struggles reflected back at me, her fears for the child she carried, and the memories of a past life that threatened to consume her. "I trust you," she finally whispered, her voice steady as if saying the words out loud softened the burden they bore. "But what if it's not enough?" The vulnerability in her gaze almost broke me, and I reached out, wrapping my fingers around her delicate wrist. "We will make it enough. We have to." My voice poured warmth into the chill of the room, staking my claim to hope in the face of despair. Suddenly, another crash resonated from below, the sound reverberating through the floorboards like an echo of panic, snapping me back into the reality we faced. I pointed to a small window at the far end of the room, nestled amidst the old wooden beams. "We need to get out of here, get out." Clara's voice trembled, the fear blossoming in her chest once more. "What if he sees us? Then we make him regret it," I replied, urgency thrumming in my veins. "If we work together, we can outsmart him." As I gently pulled her toward the window, I prayed for a moment of clarity. Together, we climbed onto the dilapidated chair I wedged beneath it, our combined weight creaking under pressure. Clara's hand trembled as she pulled me closer, and I fought to create a semblance of safety around her as we peered into the world outside, the rain blanketing the earth like a thick shroud, obscuring our chance of escape. "Here, help me," I gestured at the window, already lifting it open against the tempest's insistence. The cool wind whipped in, tangling my hair, but the freedom outside felt intoxicating, a sharp contrast to the anguish brewing inside. Just as I realized we hadn't taken into account the ground far below, a presence flickered in the corner of my vision. My breath caught, the stillness in the air shattering as the shadow of the man emerged beneath our window, a dark silhouette shrouded beneath layers of rage and purpose. "Clara." He boomed, voice like thunder, raw and unyielding. "You can't run from me forever." My heart raced with wicked urgency, remembering all the reasons she needed to leave him behind. But more than just her past loomed in the frame of that doorway. I could feel the weight of our uncertain future pressing against my chest, and I knew we were perilously close to everything unraveling. "There's no time. We have to go now." I caught her eye, that fiery determination beginning to match my own. She nodded, and together we clambered out, the world swirling around us as I braced for the fall. Landing on the wet ground jolted through my bones, but we barely had a moment to pause. As we took off running towards the trees flanking the edge of the property, I could hear the blood pounding in my ears, the mixture of the storm and our breaths pushing us forward. But just as we reached the line of shadows provided by the great pines, a blinding light suddenly cut through the storm. I froze, my breath snagged in my throat, my instincts screaming at me to take cover that I can't. Clara gasped beside me, the panic sharp in her voice, the sharpness of her resolve flaring dangerously close to breaking. "We can't go back." Before I could respond, the light advanced, illuminating the clearing in dreadful clarity. That's when I saw the patrol car parked further down the road, its red and blue lights shimmering through the veil of the storm, a beacon that was both promising and perilous. "Clara," I whispered urgently. "We need to hide. They can't see us." But as I turned to direct her to a nearby thicket, her whole demeanor shifted. "No," she replied, firming up, defiance glimmering in her stormy eyes. "I can't hide anymore. Not from him, not from them." My heart sank, fraying at the edges. I hadn't considered her need to stand tall against her past mixed with a desperate need for freedom. "What are you saying?" I stepped closer, desperate to pull her away from the light. But before she could answer, the man's voice echoed through the trees again, an insidious blend of desperation and fury. "Clara. You need to come to me. It's the only way to save what's left of us." The urgency in his plea flooded the area like poison, turning the night electric. And I realized, in that moment, she was already pulling away from me, the gravity of her ties drawing her back into the storm as the thunder crashed overhead, demanding our choices with a ferocity that stole the breath from our lungs. No. I seized her arm, pulling back as we locked eyes, the storm intensifying, the moment stretching thin. "Don't do this. We can face him together." Tears formed in the corner of her eyes, a tempest of emotions swirling in the depths. "I can't let you sacrifice your life for me. I don't know what hell do." Her voice faltered, but steely resolve glimmered still. "But I won't let him take you from me." Not again. A siren wailed in the distance, a beckoning call woven through the storm clouds, but it only heightened the sense of dread pooling within me. My chest tightened as the realization crept in. She was willing to face her fate alone. Desperation clenched my heart. "Please, don't do this. Trust in us, in this fight." But Clara's gaze shifted, and for an instant, I feared that her determination could outmatch my love for her. As the reality of our situation crystallized, the ground beneath us trembled, and the weight of the storm above seemed to press down harder. We were standing on the precipice of a decision that could change everything. Before I could argue further, she pulled away from my grasp, stepping toward the light, the torment visible in her every movement, every heartbeat. "I have to do this. For you. For the baby," she whispered, and for a fleeting moment, I understood her fragile resolve. And then she turned, stepping out of the shadows and into the storm, my heart echoing a desperate goodbye. "Clara!" I shouted into the abyss she had entered, a protective fervor igniting within me, but I was left to watch her take those steps, lingering doubts coiling around my heart like barbed wire. The shadows in the trees swirled like spirits lost in their own battles, and as a new kind of storm began to rage, I realized the choice now belonged to the tempest, a fury poised to swallow us whole. But just before I turned to pursue her, I caught a glimpse of movement along the edge of the trees, another figure emerging, masked, with eyes gleaming in the dark, a new player, a new threat. And without warning, the ground split beneath me, leaving me to wonder what awaited in that labyrinth of choices and whether love could truly illuminate the darkness that had stitched itself into our lives. The wind howled between the trees, carrying Clara's silhouette far into the tempest, and my heart splintered at the sight of her stepping willingly toward the storm. Her bravery, fueled by desperation and a fierce love I couldn't fully grasp, tore through me with an agonizing twist. The shadows danced ominously around us, and yet I felt a new unease settle in my bones that I turned my attention to the figure that shimmered along the tree-line. They approached with an eerie grace, edging closer, but their expression remained obscured beneath a hood. My instinct screamed for caution. This was not the hero I hoped for. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice breaking the silence encasing the moment. I, too, was cloaked in darkness, but it was the fear that rose in me now that threatened to overshadow every other emotion I felt. A soft chuckle resonated from the figure, echoing through the rain, calm amidst the chaos. "Just a friend," they replied, the voice smooth yet riddled with something distinctly unsettling. "But tell me, are you really prepared to chase after her? To stand against him? You're eager for battle, but teenage fantasies often ignore the stark reality. Whoever you are, stay away from her." I shouted, adrenaline spurring me into a defensive stance. "I have nothing to lose." "Ah, but that's where you're wrong." They stepped forward, revealing a flash of Silvera knife in their hand. "You do have something to lose, and if you're so eager to follow her, you may very well lose far more than you think." Behind me, the echoed calls of Clara's name spun wildly against the crescendo of the storm. Her words hung in my mind like a specter. "I have to do this, for the baby. No one should have to shoulder such burdens alone, but here we were, two souls enmeshed in a destiny neither of us could escape. That I won't let you hurt her." I pressed on, the storm's energy galvanizing my despair into something fiery and resolute. You think wielding a knife intimidates me? She's more powerful than you know, and you are just a man with love as your anchor, they interrupted, their voice steeped in mockery. Love is a beautiful thing, but against a tempest, it can drown you. For a moment, I faltered. The truth in their words resonated, sparking self-doubt. What did I know of the world Clara had risen from? Of the past that had so deeply rooted itself in her current struggle? I glanced back toward where she had stepped into the shadows, and the flickering flame of her defiance seemed to call me. Perhaps you don't realize that, in trying to save her, you may inadvertently lead her straight into the heart of the storm, they continued, seemingly toying with me. How heroic do you feel, then, if your love only forges her path to destruction? I won't let fear dictate my choices. I spat, anger igniting a blaze of courage within me. You don't understand what Clara has endured, or what she's risking for that child. Their laughter rang out, a chiming, chilling sound that ricocheted against the breeze. And do you? Do you truly understand? The more you stand in her path, the more you risk losing her to the very fate you seek to avert. When the storm crashes down, will it be you who chases the flash of hope, or will it be her holding on to the anguish of her past? As the words settled, a deep unease began to unfurl in me. I had been so certain of my purpose, of the conviction that bound us together against all odds. But what if my determination was just another layer of trouble for her? Suddenly, the mission blurred, weighed down by the shadows of uncertainty and guilt. That if you love her, why not let her go? The figure pressed. Unburden her from your expectations, set her free. Instead, you cling like a vice, and shall only wish she'd never taken the step away from you in the first place. No. I roared, but it came out hollow. Sacred vows of love had roots in sacrifice, but now doubt threatened to crack my foundation. The voice continued, thick with the rain-soaked air around us. To save her, sometimes you must let her find her own way, no matter how painful it may seem. Ask yourself, what are you truly fighting for? The love you claim to hold, or the shadow of an illusion? The figure took a step back, giving me time to contemplate their words as the cacophony of the storm drummed a harsh rhythm in my ears. Confusion gnawed at me like a flock of starving birds, relentless and unyielding. The night bore down as realization crystallized amid those swirling doubts. What do you know of love? I snapped, fighting against the tide of uncertainty. The kind that takes root and cannot be uprooted. What do you know of sacrifice that weighs as much as a heartbeat? They cocked their heads slightly, and though their face remained obscured, something in their posture shifted, becoming less threatening and more thoughtful. Perhaps more than you. But even love must demand respect for its boundaries. Know this, love cannot thrive in a storm. It must seek the light, or it dissolves in sorrow. You have a choice. Behind me, the tension of the storm raged on like a symphony of thunder and chaos, and for the first time, conviction began to tremble in the restraints of Mother Nature. But as quickly as that potential spark ignited, I felt the pulse of fear thrumming somewhere in the distance, a haunting reminder that Clara was still out there, drawn away by her own desperate quest for freedom. And that's when a raspy voice broke through the roaring storm, another familiar echo. Where is she? I whipped around, heart stammering in my chest. It was him, the man who had haunted her past, his rage palpable even from a distance, armor-clad in darkness mixed with a frenzied sense of purpose. A rush of instinct surged through me as a chill swept the air, that I could feel the suspense sharp in my throat. Decisions were piling up like wood in a storm-fueled fire, and I had only moments left to forge a path. Will you follow the light, or will you drown in shadows? The figure posed with haunting calm, even as the danger loomed closer. The choice remains yours. That I gritted my teeth, steel sharpening my resolve. You can't escape the storm, it's up to us to face it. In that moment of clarity, I turned my back on the figure, stepping away from the fear and recklessness that had momentarily captivated me, a determined guardian against the tumult. I would search for Clara not as a savior desperately trying to shield her, but as a partner willing to stand tall against whatever fate awaited us both. The storm may rage, but I would choose to fight for her, for the child. And just as I began running into the dark, the world around me erupted with the cacophony of certainty, witnesses to a dance of destiny pushing us toward the edge of everything. Clara! I shouted again, my voice swallowed by the wind, but it was the only promise I could uphold amid the storm, the unwavering vow that as long as breath remained in my body, I would find her. Just as cold tendrils of fear crept back into my heart, a flash of light pierced through the dark beneath the storm clouds, hinting at the true power of love one I was determined to seize, no matter the cost. But the next moment, a deafening crash shattered the air, and I froze, feeling fate's lurking fingers begin to wrap around my heart. This time, would it break me forever? The weight of the storm bore down on me, a tangible force that threatened to crush my resolve. I could scarcely breathe with the frantic rhythm of my heart thumping against my ribs. The scream of the wind seemed to mock my desperation, urging me to grasp at shadows rather than face the light ahead. But Clara needed me now, more than she ever had. That I pushed forward, the memories of our shared laughter flaring like tiny embers illuminating the night. Clara's smile had always ignited something deep within me, a warmth I had never known before. And now, that warmth was kindling into a fierce blaze, demanding action amidst the encroaching darkness. Clara! The wind swallowed my voice, but I pressed on, each footfall a declaration, each shout a promise. If only I could cut through the storm, through the past looming in every shadow, to reach her before it was too late. That as I navigated the undergrowth, branches clawing at my skin, I felt a nagging dread gnaw at my insides. What would I find when I caught up to her? Would she still be the woman I knew, the one woven together with dreams of freedom and love, or had the tempest of her past stripped her bare, leaving a haunting echo of the person she once was? The memory of the figure lingered at the edge of my thoughts, their voice echoing warnings about love and sacrifice. Could I truly understand the burden Clara carried? The intricacies of her pain were like a tapestry woven with threads darker than my own. Their words echoed like a haunting melody: to save her, sometimes you must let her find her own way. But that notion felt wrong, like an anchor trying to float. Love isn't about relinquishing control, it's about standing side by side facing storms together, not apart. That I pushed deeper into the heart of the tempest, every beat of the rain an affirmation of my pursuit. The shadows ensnared me, whispers of uncertainty creeping in, but I refused to surrender to despair. I had fought against the tide of my own isolation for too long to let fear win now. Just as I stumbled over a gnarled root, a flicker of movement caught my eye, a silhouette darting between the trees. My throat tightened, and I called out one last time, a raw plea soaring above the cacophony. Clara! The figure hesitated, and in the trembling light of a distant flash of lightning, I caught a glimpse of her wearing that same fierce expression of determination. But her eyes revealed the confusion and exhaustion that accompanied her struggles, a silent acknowledgment echoing between us. She glanced back momentarily, the weight of indecision pulling at her stance. Please, come back. I shouted, desperation thickening my words like syrup. We can do this together. The moment hung in the air, a fragile balance teetering under the weight of the storm's fury. For a heartbeat, I thought she might turn. The glimmer of hope shifted in her eyes before turbulent shadows whispered back, and she abruptly surged ahead. Clara! I lunged forward, reached out, but a sudden cacophony erupted around us, a deafening crash that shattered the night into a symphony of perilous chaos. The trees groaned under the strain, the very earth trembling beneath my feet, as if the world was coming undone. Clara! My voice rose in panic, unyielding against the darkness enveloping her. I couldn't lose her, not like this. The thought sent a fresh wave of adrenaline coursing through my veins as I sprinted after her, each heartbeat a reminder of the urgency inciting my every move. When I finally breached the last of the underbrush, I stumbled into a clearing, breathless and frantic. My heart dropped at the sight before me, a swirling tempest of energy wrapped around Clara as she faced down the man from her past, a figure I knew to be both her tormentor and her cage. Get away from her! I shouted, raw anger flooding my voice as I stepped into the fury of the scene playing out before us. Clara stood at the brink, torn between freedom and the life that had once defined her. The man turned slowly, a wicked smile curling his lips, as if he had been waiting for my arrival. Ah, the valiant savior! Crashing into the tempest. But tell me, he said, his voice dripping with mocking disdain, what do you really think you can do about it? You have no power here. Every fear I had wrestled with came crashing down upon me, but anger kindled my courage. You don't know anything about love. I spat back, my fists clenched tight. Clara glanced back at me, her expression a chaotic swirl of longing and doubt. It felt as if time stood still, the storm quieting for just a heartbeat, only for that silence to be torn apart by an explosion of raw emotion. Leave her alone. My voice wavered, but I forced it firm. She's fought hard for her freedom. That he snickered, taking a step closer, wrapping his sinister aura around us like a shroud. But at what cost? Love can be a shackle too, boy. Are you ready to take on the darkness, knowing that it doesn't just devour monsters? It devours everything in its path, leaving you whispering to shadows. A crack of thunder split the air, reverberating through my bones. It was then I realized I could see Clara trembling at the edge of the tempest, her fight for freedom matched only by the need to protect me from the storm raging within her. Clara. I cried again, the raw ache in my chest mingling with desperation. Fight. You don't have to let him pull you back. You're stronger than this. But something shifted in her expression, a flicker of indecision illuminated for the briefest of moments, and my stomach twisted. Stricken uncertainty flashed through her gaze, anchoring her in a world filled with fear and doubt. The man pressed closer still, his hand extending toward her, and I felt panic searing through me. Do not let him cloud your mind. You have the power to choose. In that moment of darkness and chaos, as her past closed in around her, I saw a familiar glimmer of light reflected in her eyes. But before I could reach her, the ground beneath us shifted violently, a rumble that sent shockwaves racing through the clearing. The man's grip closed tight around Clara's wrist, teeing her to the darkness, threatening to reclaim her. Foolish choice. He roared, and the tempest unleashed its fury upon us, raw and unyielding. The world seemed to shatter, splintering amidst howling winds, and I dove forward driven by instinct and a love so fierce it burned brighter than the storm itself. I would not lose her again. And just as I reached for her, the earth buckled and collapsed, swallowing all light into shadow. In that fleeting moment, time fractured, shattering into countless pieces. What remained would forever alter our fates. Clara. I cried, my voice fading into the abyss as the whirlwind consumed everything, dragging us into a void where love would battle against the chaos, and I wouldn't know if I'd ever see her again. I plunged into the darkness, the world around me dissolving into an abyss of uncertainty. There was a visceral tug, a chord strummed by love and desperation as the ground heaved beneath my feet. Unseen forces threatened to rip us apart, and I fought against that chaotic torrent with every ounce of strength I possessed. The void enveloped me, haunting whispers swirling as if the very air conspired to separate us. Clara. The sound of her name was a chant, a promise laced with heartache. I could feel her presence slipping away, and it ignited a fierce resolve within me, not simply to save her, but to confront the shadows that sought to consume her. In that vast, disorienting blackness, my mind raced back to our moments together, the small spark of hope that had ignited our connection. When we first met, on that lonely ranch, her laughter had been the softest echo, brushing through the silence. I could still see the way her spirit danced even amidst the looming shadows of her past. But now, claws of doubt tore through that memory, exacerbating the tempest that threatened to swallow me whole. Suddenly, I felt a warmth, faint but palpable, wrapping around me as if her spirit knew I was fighting on her behalf. Clara, I murmured, and as I reached into the swirling void, a flicker of light began to grow in the distance. It illuminated the treacherous pathway ahead, guiding me as I soldiered on, desperate to grasp that glimmer of hope. Then, just as light had materialized, so too did a familiar voice, gritty and tainted with malice. You're too late, the man said, his presence a palpable weight, merging with the shadows. No one can save her from her past. Not even you. His words snaked through the darkness, both mocking and sorrowful. No. I shouted defiantly, the pure force of my resolve defying his insinuation. You're wrong. She is not just a victim to be claimed. She is a warrior, a woman who will choose her path. Within me surged a relentless tide of emotions, love, fear, determination, and at that moment, I grasped the magnitude of what had brought us together in the first place. It wasn't just that I wanted to protect her from him, it was rooted deeper, into the marrow of my being. It was the intimacy of knowing her struggles, her laughter, her unyielding spirit. As if awakened by my conviction, a beam of light glimmered intensely, and I rushed toward it, yearning for her touch, her spirit. "Clara!" I called out again, my voice shaping the darkness into something electrifying. "No matter where you are, I will not let you go," and then, in the fracture of that moment, I heard it to a whisper woven with fragility, but unmistakably her. "I'm here." The enormity of that tiny voice rekindled my hope, and I felt an invisible thread draw me closer as I surged through the void, desperate to reunite. My heart raced, fueled by the knowledge that she was still fighting, that she had not surrendered to despair. Emerging from the dark, I found myself contending against the echoes of her past, still present, fierce and Laminga storms swirling with memories and shadows that held her captive. But in the eye of that tempest, I locked onto her silhouette, and everything else faded into insignificance. "Clara, hold on." I lunged forward, straining against the unseen forces wrenching her away. The earth trembled beneath us, but my focus remained steadfast, my heart guiding my every step. The connection we shared shattered the hold of doubt like fragile glass. Then, in a moment that felt like eternity, our hands collided, the surge of energy crackling between us igniting a primal instinct within me. I pulled her close, grounding her amidst the chaos, and I could see her eyes shimmering with flickering hope, battling against the shadows threatening to engulf her. Yet that moment of connection was fleeting, and the darkness, defiant and relentless, surged forth, wrapping around us like chains. The man's laughter reverberated through the air, and I could feel his presence pressing down once more, threatening to sever our link. "Love is not enough to conquer this storm," he sneered. "You have no idea who she is, what she's capable of becoming. No, I said, my voice reclaiming strength and clarity. "It's not about what she was. It's about who she chooses to be." But before I could strengthen my hold around her and call forth the full weight of my conviction, the storm itself answered not with fury, but with a collective pulse, almost sentient, swirling around us. It spiraled towards Clara, but within its heart was an unfiltered truth, every fear she had ever faced, every wound from her past, congealing into a vicious cyclone. In that pivotal moment when light collided with the shadows, I felt something shift. It was as if the tempest turned its gaze back upon us, intertwining our fates in a way that carved out hope from despair's grip. But it was also an awakening, a revelation that there was an underpinning to this darkness, a force even greater than the love I harbored. Suddenly, an overwhelming force launched Clara back, reuniting her with the shadows, twisting her away from me. I felt a heartbreak so profound it seemed to echo through dimensions. "Clara!" I screamed, as she was consumed by the swirling tempest, leaving me clinging to the fraying thread of hope that was slipping through my fingers. Something around me shattered, splintering the very fabric of the moment. A revelation, perhaps, or an awakening of another kind altogether. It became clear in that instant, it wasn't just her past I had to contend with, it was her choice, and the battle of wills that had ensnared her heart. The storm howled, a chorus of grief and anger, but beneath the roar was another sound, soft, almost like the rustle of leaves. I turned, barely able to comprehend what lay before me, and my heart sank further as I caught sight of a figure at the periphery of the chaos, a woman cloaked in shadows. Her gaze locked onto mine. She stepped forward, dripping with an otherworldly aura, and her voice pierced through the chaos. "You seek to save her, yet her journey is far from over. Who are you?" I stammered, the impact of her words reverberating through my soul. "This is only the beginning." She raised a hand, gesturing toward the darkness enveloping Clara, and my heart raced as I realized the fullness of her unspoken truth. "You will face the trials not just of love, but of sacrifice," and with that, the shadows stirred, the crescendo of the storm crashing around us, and in one final blink, everything fragmented anew, swallowed into a torrential chaos where love battled alongside shadows, and I was left standing on the precipice, my heart dangling in the balance, unsure of what awaited us both. The wind roared like a vengeful spirit as I staggered back, the echoes of the woman's words reverberating in my mind. The tempest swirled around me, an unfathomable chaos that clawed at my heart. In that instant, the world I knew felt grotesquely distant and surreal. I was trapped, suspended between desperation and an overwhelming truth I wasn't yet ready to grasp. "Clara!" I shouted again, the name a lifeline I clung to as the shadows danced and leaped about us. The figure at the edge of the storm seemed to dissolve into the darkness as the winds howled, but her presence lingered in my mind, a tether to an unfurling reality I could scarcely comprehend. With a primal instinct rising within me, I fought against the gale, searching for her silhouette in the swirling distinction of shadows and hope. Time stretched infinitely, I could feel the weight of moments heavy with loss and yearning. My heart thrummed with determination, resonating with the essence of Clara's spirit, as I called out once more, "I believe in you." Then came a spark, a whisper amidst the cacophony of darkness, bold and defiant. "I am still here." The voice felt like a caress, igniting a fierce flicker of hope. It anchored me amidst the tempest, the sound reverberating through the chaos that surrounded us, but hope wove a delicate fabric, and I knew all too well it could unravel at any moment should I lose faith. I strained against the tempest, the storm's shadows clawing at my resolve, but Clara's voice steadied me. I focused on that connection, eyes closed, allowing the truth of our bond to flow through me, a warmth wrapping around my heart like a soft embrace against the icy pull of despair. In that moment, the darkness rippled, and for the first time, I caught a glimpse of Clara's face, illuminated by a radiant glow that cut through the shadows. Her eyes shone with a fierce determination, a blend of fear and strength that ignited a fire within me. "You have to keep fighting," I urged, reaching again, each word a lifeline woven with unyielding conviction. The storm twisted, seeming to respond to our words, reflecting the battle of wills between the love that bound us and the shadows that sought to tear us apart. I felt Athena's shift in the atmosphere, the hint of awakening somewhere deep within the chaos, a possibility that lay just beyond our reach, and then, just as suddenly as it began, the wind stilled. The tempest hesitated, its ferocity tapering into a gentle whisper, as if it too held its breath, caught between duty and desire. "What do you want?" I demanded, gathering my strength, my voice a clarion call against the gathering shadows. "What is it that you seek?" Silence enveloped us, hanging heavy in the air, until a voice emerged from the shadows, not the man whose malevolent spirit sought to conquer, but a soft murmur, laced with the weight of despair and longing. "Her past will not let her go easily, nor will it forgive those who seek to disrupt its hold." The voice was haunting, entwined with memories long left unspoken. It wasn't just Clara's past that stood in our way, it was the chains that shackled her, each memory sharp like glass, ready to tear apart the fabric of our dreams. "That if you wish to truly save her, you will have to confront those ghosts," the voice continued, resonating through the void. "Prepare yourself for a journey into the heart of her despair." I stood at the precipice of overwhelming emotion, my heart heavy with the weight of everything I had touched upon. "What do you mean?" I implored. "What journey?" The air crackled with tension, the shadows swirling as if deliberating the choice laid before us. "You must dive deeper into her memories, into the pain she has buried. With each revelation, perhaps you can unearth the truth," the voice replied softly, an echo of compassion woven with somber reality. That I hesitated, fear gripping the edges of my resolve. Was I truly ready to walk through the doors of Clara's past? Was love enough to survive a voyage through her darkest moments? But the thought of losing her, of allowing the shadows claiming Clara to win, spurred me. I could not allow myself to retreat, not now. "I will do whatever it takes," I declared fiercely, the energy rising within me like a roaring fire. "I will meet her past head-on and prove that she is not defined by it." If in answer, the storm began to whirl once more, spiraling around us, both pulling, twisting, a tempest of memories colliding against one another. The air shimmered with energy, the tendrils of darkness coiling closer like serpents, teasing forward and retreating as if mining my growing determination. In the eye of this new storm, I felt a surge of courage, the very marrow of my being reinforcing that all was not lost. With Clara's voice close to me, weaving through the raw chaos, I bolstered my strength, shouting out into the void. "Together, we will rise above this," and in that fleeting moment, the shadows parted, revealing fractured memories glinting like shattered glass. A doorway surged forth, an opening into the heart of her past that beckoned us both, an invitation to confront her demons. Yet, the man's laughter echoed through the tempest once more, chilling my spine as he whispered, "You have no idea what you will uncover. Some truths are better left buried." As the storm surged forward, drawing me into its depths. I felt apprehensive but directed, sensing the rush of a greater truth unfolding. Behind me, Clara's spirit flickered, a light against the dark, a beacon through intermingled fears and hopes, an unwavering promise even amidst uncertainty. As I stepped toward the threshold of her past, heart thundering in my chest, dread and hope collided, a wondrous yet terrifying exploration ahead, lingering in the shadows. What would I uncover as I journeyed down that tumultuous path? Would we emerge stronger, or would it shatter the fragile connection we had fought so desperately to build? And just like that, in the silence that followed, clarity and chaos collided, leading me into the unknown where love would be tested, and the shadows would bring forth a harrowing truth I never expected. As I stepped into the swirling vortex of Clara's memories, I felt like a ship pushed by the tide, every heartbeat thrumming with uncertainty as the shadows surrounded us. It was a journey into the very core of her despair, a descent into the darkness she had buried so deep. The swirling void ignited with fragments of her past, restless and alive, as if inviting me to witness everything she had endured. Images unfolded before me, a kaleidoscope of moments she had woven into silence. I saw glimpses of her childhood, laughter echoing in sun-drenched fields, but that joy was shattered when darkness seeped in, distorting the beauty created just moments before. Fragments of memories twisted and spiraled, Clara standing in a cold room, a man looming over her, another scene unfurling with chaos, a frantic escape into the night under a sliver of a crescent moon. Each vision carried a weight, a shackly, a deeper understanding of the girl I had come to love. There was a recurring motif, piercing through every image, a figure cloaked in darkness, filled with malice. His voice echoed like thunder, reminding me of the man who claimed her as his own, the chains that bound her heart even now. The reliving of her anguish surrounded us, a storm of emotions clashing against each other. Yet through this tempest, Clara's spirit shone through, an ember of resilience weaving its way like a vine through thorns, fighting for breath, for life. Suddenly, I was thrust into a memoria confrontation in a dimly lit room where Clara stood defiant. "I will not be your possession," she screamed, her voice a rallying cry against the storm of this shadow. I watched, completely enraptured, the strength she had even in the face of despair. The man loomed closer, deception oozing from his presence, yet she held her ground as if daring him to take what he thought should be his. Do you even realize what you're doing, Clara? He sneered, shrouded in authority. You think you have a choice? You're nothing without me. But I watched as she fought back, igniting courage within that room. I'd rather be nothing than trapped in a life that isn't mine. And in that moment, part of me rejoiced. It was the bravery I had sensed in her all along, a fierce heart fighting against the currents of abuse and control. Then everything shifted in a blink, the scene fracturing and tossing me into another memoria night, laying heavy with heartache, the breaking point. Clara paced in a dim corner, shadows curling around her as she whispered to herself, "You can't keep running. You have to face him." The storm within her mirrored the tempest raging outside the memory. She gripped her belly protectively, desperate and alone in the silence, but it was a moment of realization. She had been fighting her battles in solitude for far too long. But then the figure crept back in, a haunting presence that leached hope from the air. "What's this? Another escape? You can't outrun the truth, Clara." His words felt like ice, yet I felt Clara's energy flaring with undeniable power. "You're wrong," she declared, the shadows flickering as if his words fanned a flame. "I will not be who you want me to be. Not anymore. I choose freedom." That choice resonated through me, charging the air with an electricity born from recognition and clarity. But those uplifting moments were too quickly followed by a new confrontation, a suffocating pressure bearing down as the memories shifted like sand. I watched as he cornered her again, words dripping with manipulation. "You think you can have love without consequences? Choice comes with sacrifice." His voice was a tempest, heavy and full of accusation that I felt her spirit tremble beneath the weight, the scars he had left on her heart erupting into a volley of questioning. "What if I lose everything?" She was both fierce and fragile, and part of me longed to reach out, to protect her from the raw edge of uncertainty. Yet, I couldn't rush in. His was her battle to fight, a testament to every ounce of strength that had flourished against insurmountable odds. But then, the storm surged once more, collapsing around us as the Shadows began to close in. I could almost hear the whispers, thickening with doubt, "You're not worthy. You can't save her." But deep within the chaos, Clara's spirit flickered with a defiance that ignited the air around us, growing brighter, and it felt as if we shared a breath. That I stood firm, my presence tethering her spirit, creating a resonance that rang clear. "You are worthy, Clara. You deserve to forge your own destiny." My voice emerged from that cacophony, wrapping around her like a lifeline. Her eyes found mine, those fierce pupils holding an unfathomable depth, a soul reborn amidst the shadows, and just like that, the tide shifted within the storm. Clara pushed back against the phantom of her tormentor, a figure bathed in darkness that shrank against the flicker of her resolve. "I will not let you dictate my future," she cried, the words igniting an energy that rippled outward. But then everything fissured around us, a sudden implosion swallowing the darkness and revealing stark illumination. I felt the world shifting, rearranging, and in its wake, I could see a vision of our loved one that transcended the storms, reaching the very essence of who we were meant to be. Clara was more than her past, and she was choosing to reclaim that power. Suddenly, the shadows around us began to dissolve under the weight of her resolve. "Together, we'll find our way," she whispered, and I could feel how it anchored our bond, weaving threads of light through the darkness that had defined her life for far too long. But the remnants of the storm loomed, a fresh swell rising from the depths, ready to reclaim its hold. I knew it wasn't over yet. We still faced the man who sought to destroy her, a final battle looming on the horizon. But at that moment, so many pieces clicked together, and I finally understood her most profound truth. Love is not merely serenity amid chaos, it's the unwavering belief in one another, a guiding light into the darkest night. As the forces of nature erupted around us, forging a bridge to the abyss of our intertwined futures, I extended my hand and found hers. "No matter what happens," I said, "we face it together." The storm surrendered its fury around us for just a heartbeat, the culmination of love, pain, hope, and relentless determination racing forward toward the inevitable conclusion of our tempestuous fight. Together, we ignited a roaring flame into the mirrored dark, unleashing the truth that would either set us free or bind us forever. And in that moment, with hands clasped tightly, I heard Clara's voice rise above the din as a singular resolution took form, a promise, unwavering and solemn: "I choose love. I choose freedom." Sparks danced in the air around us, echoes resonating, 1,000 shared moments, a cosmos where love triumphed against storms, forming the bond we could forever hold fast to. The tempest calmed just enough to see what lay ahead, the shadows retreating at the power of our unity. And as we steeled ourselves for the final confrontation, the grip of darkness challenged by the brilliance of love, I held her face between my palms, grounding us. "We are more than your past, Clara. We are the light cutting through the storm." Together, she affirmed, and with that single agreement, we prepared to face whatever chaos dared approach, our hearts beating in unison, resolute against the tempestuous winds, forging ahead toward a tomorrow born from the echoes of our truthful love. And even as the shadows roared one last time, I felt certainty bloom within me, a knowledge that love once ignited could not be extinguished. Together, we emerged from the darkness, hearts entwined, ready to reclaim our story with fierce determination. The horizon awaited us, and I knew that whatever storm raged, love would always guide us home. As the light cut through the remnants of our struggles, I drew her close, whispering fervently, "No matter what lies ahead, I promise you, you'll always fight for us." In that moment, the storm ceased to exist, transformed into a whisper of hope laced with truth as we forged our path toward the horizon, standing steadfast against the winds of the past, and with hearts ignited, we stepped forward together, into the promise of a beautiful tomorrow.